car ahead drifted between lanes, but its wheels never touched the asphalt. At first, I thought it was a trick of the headlights, the way the low beam flickered over a patch of raised paint or the uneven surface of the road. But the longer I watched, the more certain I became. The tires didn't roll, didn't squeak, didn't interact with the road at all. The vehicle glided, hovering slightly above the asphalt, a meter perhaps, and yet it moved like any normal car should. Smooth, deliberate, almost lazy in its motion. The highway was empty, stretching straight through low hills and shadowed trees, the kind that feel like they're leaning in when no one's looking. I slowed, my hands tightening on the wheel, and the engine's hum felt louder somehow, amplified against the oppressive silence around me. No other cars passed. No wind stirred. Only the headlights of the drifting car, bouncing faintly across the reflective road markers, betrayed its presence. I tried to rationalize. Maybe a malfunctioning car with magnetic suspension, some experimental prototype. I eased forward, staying a cautious distance behind, my eyes glued to the unnatural rhythm of its movement. The closer I got, the stranger it became. When it curved gently to the left, there was no change in speed. No sound of tires brushing asphalt. Even the reflection in my rearview mirror lagged behind, delayed, like the car occupied a slightly different space than mine. A flash of headlights reflected on its smooth hood. I caught a glimpse of the driver, or what I assumed was a driver. There was a person, yes, sitting upright, hands on the wheel, but the figure's edges blurred, faintly shimmering, as though refracted through water. I blinked. When I looked again, the face had moved slightly, though the car had not. My pulse quickened. The road curved, and as I followed, I noticed the oddest detail. The lane markings under the car didn't move past its wheels. Normally, lines rush by in a steady rhythm, but here they remained, frozen for a heartbeat, then slipped backward as if the car's motion had its own temporal rhythm. I checked my speedometer. I wasn't going fast, maybe 60, but the hovering car seemed to float at 60 in one instant and 80 in the next, yet never touched the road. I considered stopping. Perhaps the safest thing would be to pull over, turn off the engine, and wait. But a faint, imperceptible pulse drew my eyes forward. The car drifted steadily, and I realized it wasn't just moving down the road. It was guiding me, its trajectory unervingly precise. Every turn it took, every slight drift between lanes, seemed almost intentional, as if it expected me to follow. The night deepened. Trees along the roadside thickened into shadows, swallowing the horizon. My headlights cut only so far ahead. Occasionally, a glint of the hovering car's chrome, if it could even be called chrome, caught light, and I saw subtle distortions in the road. The asphalt warped slightly beneath it, rippling like water disturbed by a stone, but no water existed. When I blinked, the effect vanished, leaving only a perfectly dry road and my own pounding heart. I tried to focus on rational cues: speed, distance, braking. Yet every time I gauged its position, the car responded in ways that felt impossible. When I slowed, it seemed to speed up just enough to maintain the same distance. When I accelerated, it floated effortlessly, matching me perfectly, never touching the road. Once, I swerved slightly to pass, and it glided sideways, like a boat pushed by currents I couldn't feel. My chest tightened. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. Rain began softly, distant at first, then closer. But it wasn't the rain I should have felt on my windshield. The drops fell everywhere except where I drove. My headlights cut through the air, dry and still, but in the drifting car's wake, droplets appeared briefly, only to vanish before touching the asphalt. I realized I could hear the soft hiss of the rain in the reflection of the other car, just enough to make me doubt my ears, doubt everything. The road widened slightly, and I caught sight of a bridge ahead. The car ahead entered it with the same effortless glide, moving perfectly straight along its span. My car followed, tires gripping the asphalt, but the gap between me and the hovering vehicle shrank without reason. The bridge's structure reflected in its windows, warped slightly, edges stretching and bending, as if the glass didn't quite belong to this world. I blinked again. The reflections adjusted, but the sense of wrongness remained. I tried to speak. "Hey, hey!" My voice sounded swallowed by the empty night, the echoes faint and delayed. The hovering car didn't slow or respond. I realized it wasn't aware of me, not in any ordinary sense. It existed on its own plane, moving with intention that didn't include human interaction, yet that intention was impossible to ignore. Every instinct screamed to pull off the road, but some quiet, insistent part of me, some part one couldn't name, urged me to follow. Then the air changed. Not temperature, not wind, but the weight of the space around the car. I could feel it in my chest, like a pressure building from somewhere above, somewhere unseen. My headlights caught the car again, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw the wheels bend, the suspension droop, and yet the vehicle remained perfectly horizontal, perfectly poised, unshaken by gravity or friction. Its motion was liquid, impossible, and I could no longer tell if I was accelerating or standing still. A flash of light from the bridge structure reflected in its windows. Inside, for a moment, I thought I saw eyes, countless eyes, staring back at me. Not human, not animal, just presence. Watching, studying. And then, as if acknowledging my fear, it drifted slightly to the left, opening the next curve like a guide, a lure. I pressed the accelerator, instinctive, and the gap closed. The car ahead didn't move faster, yet I fell into it, carried by some invisible current I couldn't resist. The sound of tires against asphalt returned, sharp and jarring, though only from my own car. All else was impossible silence. The hovering vehicle moving through the world without contact, without friction, without consequence. I realized I hadn't blinked for minutes, and my eyes ached, but I couldn't look away. The car wasn't just ahead. It was leading me somewhere, and each curve, each drift, was deliberate. This path was not the highways. It was a different geometry, a space warped to its will. Finally, the road forked, a split in the asphalt, two directions, one ascending slightly, the other dipping into shadows. The hovering car chose the dip. I followed. The trees leaned in closer here, their trunks twisted, branches bending unnaturally. Yet I knew they were real enough to catch the headlights' glare. I tried to slow, but the distance shrank, closing impossibly. The vehicle's presence pressed on me, like a tide I could not resist, and I realized I had no choice. I don't know how far we went, how many miles or minutes, only that my hands ached, my mind reeled, and the road outside the car ceased to feel real. The hovering car continued, gliding, moving between lanes with the effortless precision of something that obeyed different rules, yet I understood, with a chill certainty, that I was following it somewhere I shouldn't be. Somewhere beyond physics, beyond reason, beyond return. I looked down at my own wheels, felt them grip, the familiar hum of rubber on asphalt grounding me just enough. But the weightless vehicle ahead showed me a truth I couldn't deny. Motion did not require contact. Presence did not require proximity. And whatever it was following, whatever it had been searching for, was not the road, not the air, not me. It was waiting, patient, outside the laws that governed ordinary things. And I was already in its path. The next exit ramp spiraled downward far deeper than the terrain allowed. I'd been driving for hours along the interstate. A ribbon of asphalt stretched beneath the night sky, and the GPS had been spitting static for miles, the blue line twitching across the screen like a living thing. I'd taken this exit 100 times before, or thought I had, but tonight something was wrong. The ramp slope was steep, far steeper than the overpasses above should have allowed, yet perfectly smooth, too smooth. The guardrails seemed optional, vanishing into darkness at certain stretches, leaving only the pale reflection of my headlights on asphalt that shouldn't have been there. I eased off the accelerator, gripping the wheel a little tighter. The air inside the car felt heavier, as if the descent were compressing the space around me. My tires whispered against the road in a way that was almost muffled, like the sound had been filtered through layers of wet cloth. Every shadow beyond the beams of my headlights felt like it had its own weight, its own depth. Trees and hills above, the familiar outlines of this stretch of highway, seemed to hover, distant, as if I had left the real world behind. The first curve surprised me. A simple bend, right-hand exit, yet it looped gently beneath itself, the asphalt continuing downward in a spiral far sharper than engineering should allow. My stomach sank. I checked the speedometer. My car was doing barely 30, but the descent felt faster, unnatural. The GPS blinked again, the route line twisting, jittering, cutting across the screen in ways that made no sense. I wasn't moving in real space the way the map showed. Headlights caught the first set of signs, their reflective surfaces warped. One repeated several times along the ramp, the same warning about a sharp curve ahead, but each instance was slightly shifted, slightly delayed. I passed one, and a second appeared further back, impossibly, like the ramp was curling through itself. I blinked. My heart thrummed harder, an irritant against the steady hum of the engine. I told myself it was fatigue, that the monotony of driving at night was twisting perception. The ramp began to curve downward more sharply. The blackness beyond the guardrails seemed to stretch, a void swallowing light and sound. My tires hummed against the smooth surface, unnervingly constant, almost sterile. No gravel, no texture, no imperfection. Even the faint vibrations of a normal road were absent. It was like gliding through a tunnel of impossibility. I leaned forward slightly, trying to see the road below. But there was no bottom, or rather, the bottom should have been there, the highway descending to meet the surrounding terrain, but it wasn't. The trees that lined the hills above, the lights of the interstate behind me, the moon hovering faintly over the horizon. They all seemed to recede, as if I were watching from the end of a long telescope. And yet the ramp continued to spiral, deeper, tighter, defying everything I knew about gravity and construction. My engine roared faintly in the enclosed space of the descent, yet the sound was oddly muted. It didn't travel forward or backward. It only existed inside the car. I caught myself tapping the horn, hearing only a dull echo inside the cabin. Outside, the ramp was silent. No wind, no other cars. The night had become absolute, like the world had been peeled away above and around me. The spiral tightened. The asphalt seemed to twist slightly, edges bending in ways impossible for concrete and steel. Headlights reflected briefly on something metallic far below, but it was too far to identify. A guardrail reappeared momentarily, then vanished again, as if the road was folding in on itself. I pressed the brakes slightly, easing my speed, and for a brief instant the air seemed to thicken, resisting the motion of my car. I glanced at the GPS again. The route line no longer followed the familiar pattern. The interstate should have curved gently to the right, yet the map showed a drop, a spiral, then a straight segment that defied the surrounding topography. I leaned closer, reading the numbers. Elevation falling, impossibly. The blue line dipped below the contours of the map, disappearing into a black void beneath the screen's usual grid. A faint light flickered ahead. It could have been a reflection, a distant street lamp, or the headlights of another vehicle, but the shape of it was wrong. Too small, too sharp, too constant. I raised a hand to shield my eyes. It didn't move in relation to the ramp. It hovered, shifting slightly to match my motion, like it existed on the ramp but also outside it. My stomach twisted. My pulse quickened. I tried to rationalize. A construction light left on. A reflection from a passing vehicle. A trick of the curve. But as I approached, the light didn't behave naturally. It elongated, stretched upward, then snapped back like elastic. And the road beneath it did something impossible. A curve that should have forced me to slow didn't because the asphalt didn't behave normally. The lane markings seemed to pulse, glowing faintly in my headlights, then fading, then glowing again further below. The ramp narrowed. My tires hummed, steady, sterile. The walls of darkness around me grew closer, absorbing sound, swallowing light. I glanced up briefly at the terrain I should have been approaching. Hills, trees, the occasional light of distant buildings. They were all gone, replaced by endless black. It was as if I had descended below the world I knew, yet the road still carried me, spiraling further into the abyss. Signs appeared again, repeating, warning of curves, yet each one was impossibly aligned, reflecting the headlights in ways that made the ramp appear to loop back above itself. The depth defied logic. I realized I could no longer see the sky. The night had disappeared, leaving only darkness, the faint hum of my engine, and the illusion of concrete beneath tires that should have gripped the road but felt weightless. I pressed my hands against the wheel, leaning forward. The ramp narrowed further. A flicker of light far below drew my eye. I couldn't tell its scale or distance, only that it was steady, patient. The thought that perhaps the ramp was guiding me there, pulling me toward it, crawled into my chest. Every instinct screamed to reverse, to stop, to turn around, but there was no way back. The road above had receded into memory. The world I had known left suspended somewhere high above. A sound reached me then, subtle, faint, impossible. A distant echo, like tires on asphalt, but misaligned with my own motion. I leaned forward, straining. The echo came again. Another car? No, impossible. There was no other presence. Only the ramp, descending ever deeper, the impossible geometry bending perception, guiding me further into the void. I slowed to a crawl. The markings beneath me pulsed faintly. The light below seemed to grow, a distant, steady glow, like a faint lighthouse at the bottom of an ocean trench. I could feel it more than see it, a pull in the air, a quiet insistence that I continue. The ramp was not a road. It was a conduit, and whatever lay at the bottom waited patiently, aware of me. I braked lightly, hesitant. The ramp tightened further, spiraled so sharply I had to turn the wheel sharply. Yet my car moved effortlessly, unaffected by gravity or friction. The asphalt beneath felt unreal, the faint reflection of my headlights swimming in an impossible curvature. The world above was gone. There was only the spiral, the darkness, and the light below. Couldn't stop. The ramp demanded motion. Every instinct screamed to abandon reason, yet I couldn't resist. My heart thrummed. My breath fogged in the cold air. The glow below widened slightly, a shape beginning to form, yet still impossible to define. And as I spiraled downward, deeper than the terrain should have allowed, I understood that the exit ramp was not leading me anywhere that existed. It was leading me somewhere that wanted to be found, and perhaps it had always been waiting for me.